We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
This is Multipolarity, charting the rise of the new multipolar world order. Welcome to Multipolarity, the podcast. This week we've decided to take a bit of a deep dive into what's going on in the Balkans, specifically in Serbia and Republika Srpska. There are protests there. There's been a senior politician ousted. There just seems to be a lot going on. And in our experience, even people who are quite familiar with geopolitics and so on aren't actually all that familiar with what's going on. Or if they are, they only know what they're reading in the news reports and they don't really know what to make of it. To discuss this, we're very honored to have Misa Djurkovic, who is the head of the Geopolitics Center at MCC and also a senior fellow at the Center for European Studies in Belgrade. Misa is also one of the leading public intellectuals in Serbia. So he'll give us a very, very good sense of what's going on. So first of all, Misa, thank you so much for coming on Multipolarity. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
We should start with Republika Srpska because first of all, I don't think people are as familiar with what's going on there as they are about the protests in Serbia itself, but also because Republika Srpska is actually quite a complicated entity and the way it's governed is not like a normal European or even Balkans democracy. So maybe you could give us an overview of what Republika Srpska is and why it's governed in the way that it is, and then we can discuss what's going on with Dodik there.
Okay, let's try. So just for the start, concerning the complexity of the Balkans, it's too complicated for us as well, those who are been living here. So, don't obsess yourself too much with, going, wow, how is it? It's enough to know that, Serbia is not Siberia sometimes, and we are happy that people recognize that we are part of the Europe in a way. I'm joking a little bit, but on the other hand, we could go like, very much back into the history, but let's start with what was going on in the 90s. And I mean, the Republika Srpska is one of the offsprings of the consequences of the process of destruction or dissolution of Yugoslavia. People know for Yugoslavia for sure, the first one was like, led by a king who was assassinated, and then we had occupation and horrible civil war and everything that's been going on in the Second World War. And then together at the end of the Second World War, British and Russians, I mean Soviet Union at the time, decided that partisans and not the other parts of the civil resistance will be something like in Poland, in a way, you could say. So they helped Tito, who was actually having dictatorship. We had communist dictatorship, but then again, very specific one that was more leaning toward the West and so on. So anyway, he passed away in 80, and already in the 80s, the system was kind of collapsing in many ways. And after the dictatorship disappeared, the old ethnic and religious divisions started to be the most dominant and the most important part of identity. So eventually, we got the process of dissolution of Yugoslavia with several of the wars going on. One was in Croatia, but the most horrible and the most bloody one and the longest one actually was the one in Bosnia. It started in 1992 and until 1995. So who was fighting with whom? Everyone with everyone. Actually, the division was along the ethnic and religious lines. So the two biggest, the most numerous parts of, let me say, Bosnia, that was republic, and then was declared independent state, were Muslim people, and as they started to define themselves as a nation in 93 as a Bosniaks now, and Serbian part of the Serbs, who, after the separation of Bosnia from Yugoslavia, proclaimed their own Republika Srpska. That was the name, actually. And also, there was the third part of the whole game are the Croats, who are Roman Catholics, and they don't have a big population. They were something like 70% only, but were very much homogenized into the Herzegovinian part. So anyway, there were many bloody episodes, and it was really horrible. Almost 100,000 people passed away, many refugees, many people still remember. But eventually, the war was finished with a big agreement, a big accord called the Dayton Agreement, facilitated by mostly at that time Clinton administration and also Europeans, and with the guarantees of Serbia and Croatia. So the whole idea is eventually that we got two parts. I mean, it's I'm trying really to be brief. It's not easy, but it finished with very complicated constitutional system in which we have two parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. One is Republika Srpska. It is consisting of 49% of the territory, and another one is Bosnian Croatian Federation. And so you have like local governments, then you have regional or cantonal governments, then you have entities, governments. So we have president of Republika Srpska and president of other part, and then still you have some of the institutions at the level of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it's very complicated. But anyway, the whole idea was to make some kind of, territorial division in order to stop the war. So more or less, refugees haven't returned, and both parts of, even you could say about even the third part, the Croatian part, are very homogenized, and but what was the point, and why do we have the crisis? Already from the start of 95, 96, actually. Serbs and Croatians saw this as a acceptable solution to have some kind of their autonomy. But then again, Bosniak people, supported by most Clinton administration, were having idea that this is only the step in the further reconstruction and making more unified Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the game was going on from, trying to press mostly on Serbs, but also on Croatians to give up of their autonomy. And in the meantime, we also got something which is called Office of High Representative. Actually, now it's Mr. Schmidt, who is from Germany, who is some kind of, you could say, protectorate. This is not the institution that is envisaged by Dayton Agreement, but eventually after that, international community decided to have a person that can, if he wants, like, put some extraordinary powers, or dismiss the laws, or even dismiss, as he thinks, the presidents of the entities. So, and I will finish with this as an introduction. For the last several years, Mr. Schmidt is putting very strong pressure, mostly on Republika Srpska, to give up of many of the constituencies and the rights that it got through Dayton Agreement, including, and that was the big issue, property. According to the Dayton Agreement, only the entities, or those two separate parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina, have the possession of wood or timber or land or rivers or whatsoever. But with the support of Brussels and Biden administration, Mr. Schmidt insisted that actually they have to give it up of that, and that level of Bosnia and Herzegovina has to be more unified and to take more control in order to, prepare the whole Bosnia and Herzegovina for European integration. So Republika Srpska and Milorad Dodik, who is the most important person, he's the president of, or actually, according to Schmidt, he is not anymore, but he was legitimately voted by the people with a huge democratic and popular support. And he started the fight against Schmidt, trying actually to protect the rights of Republika Srpska, which Republika Srpska has according to the Dayton. So there was a big clash, and also Schmidt used federal courts in which you don't have only representative of the people, but also international judges. It's very complicated, and he provided huge majority there. So eventually this court, federal court, started with the process against Dodik for, I don't know, neglecting ignoring the orders of Office of High Representative. Then they also put something for corruption and so on. And eventually it recently finished with sentences him for a year in prison and 5 years ban on dealing with the politics. So then again, I have to say, part of the story is that Mr. Dodik also didn't have really consistent strategy. So he was just leaning. Sometimes he would go there and appear in front of the court, trying to fight them. But then when he was not satisfied with the way they were leading the process, he said, well, I don't recognize this court. It's not legitimate. And anyway, recently it ended up by finishing the process, and according to Schmidt and the court, he is not anymore the president of the Republika Srpska. So he said that he is not recognizing that for the time being, though he took, I have to say, legally, he took the decision. He didn't refuse that totally, but then on the other hand, he's announced that in the October, Republika Srpska is going to go with a referendum, and so the people should be asked about do they accept this or not, and so on. And I just have to say one more thing, that Dodik was from time to time really speaking about when he was strongly pressed on his personal causes or Republika Srpska property issue, for example, he was threatening very often that he will go with the referendum for a full independence, which was not supported by anybody, including Serbia as well. So again, we are not very sure what's that referendum is gonna be. Sometimes he also speaks about, well, possibility of independence and so on. I personally do not think that he has still decided what's going to be. He met Richard Grenell. He also had contacts with some other people in Europe or Russia and with Vučić and so on. But I think that he is now in the process of deciding what he's going to do eventually.
So I think just to emphasize that this is not actually a normal democracy in any sense. I mean, it's a democracy up to a limit. You can vote somebody in, but if they do things that this kind of protectorate, as you call them, or governor, colonial governor, it almost sounds like, says, well, we don't like that, then they can get rid of the democratically elected leaders. So it's a very unusual system, and it's very unusual that the process that you're describing is being used to integrate it into the supposedly democratic European Union. So the whole thing's very strange. I suppose I'd just kind of briefly ask, I mean, it sounds to me like if you really wanted to destabilize the entire situation there, you'd do exactly this. You'd pick a fight over maybe not a minor issue, but it's not an existential issue for the region. It's over property rights. You push a politician like Dodik to start making noise about independence referendums, and you could light the whole place on fire. So, I mean, what do you think is motivating the Europeans? Is this just more arrogance on the part of the Brussels crowd, or do you think that they don't care if the region destabilizes?
Well, so in a way, first, the position of Christian Schmidt is also controversial because he's the first person who is heading this Office of High Representative that hasn't got full support in the Security Council. Actually, Russia and China voted against his taking place of that. I mean, so there's also debate if it's necessary, because all other guys before him have really got the full support. Now they are claiming that he doesn't need full support, and so my point is actually that also Dodik used that argument very often, and Russia, when they are supporting openly Dodik from time to time, is that actually position of Schmidt is illegitimate, that he doesn't have neither this kind of legitimacy of full support of international community that would have given him full capacity to do these kind of things. Because actually we have to say, well, there is a precedent. I think it was 98 or 2000 when the previous, it was Professor Nikola Poplashen, who was sacked because he was belonging to, I don't know, radical party and so on. So at that time, Office of High Representative already sacked him. So Schmidt says, well, there is a precedent, so I could do that. On the other hand, actually, geopolitically and in many other ways speaking, what you just mentioned, you would have no expected that somebody would really push with such a strong problematic issues going, especially at this moment with very radical moves against Dodik, who is still definitely the most popular politician, and if you would go with another election, he would have probably won them as well. So it's really problematic to eliminate. But generally, I mean, since we are following the whole this process of judicial dictatorship and abusement of judiciary all over the Europe and South America and so on, we could speak quite a lot. Well, again, it's not unexpected, because somehow, you could insist actually that it's this kind of independent judiciary, blah, blah, blah. But everybody knows that this is political decision. And on the other hand, the Americans, who had been before, the most important for the region, and somebody who was really leading the processes, with the new administration, Dodik doesn't have problems. And he was, having some contacts with Grenell, with Giuliani. He was trying really to lobby there. But, Americans didn't press him, definitely, this new administration. But on the other hand, he hasn't got the support he was hoping for, in a way. So, somehow, for the time being, Europeans are mostly Germans. British are always somewhere around. They are very, very important at the Balkans and leading quite a lot of processes. But here you could see very classical German arrogancy, European kind of style of Ursula von der Leyen, in which they want to show the strength and the muscles. We want to show that we are serious, we want to eliminate this guy and so on. And part of the story is also geopolitics, because Dodik really, even much more than Vučić, tried to play on Russian Trump, if I could say, in a way, and he was also trying to connect himself with Orban, and he really got the support. Prime Minister Orban gave support to him the day at the Estragon. Actually, he was speaking, mentioning several minutes he dedicated to illegitimate and illegal sacking of Dodik and so on. But for the time being, it seems that this part of the world, the Balkans, is being treated as very important place for Brussels, in the sense of European Union and NATO as well. And those people, I just have to mention this argument, that are thinking that EU together with NATO, combined with this new rearm initiative and safe and so on, is kind of preparing for a direct confrontation with Russia. So they think that there is idea that, somehow Republika Srpska, meaning Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia, who are the last parts of Balkans that haven't been introduced into NATO, have somehow to be put under the control. Otherwise, you don't have completely secured, if I could say, background and the whole area before, in the back, if you plan to go into fight with Russia. And many people really think that EU, Germany, and NATO have this kind of idea. And that in that sense, also, we don't have to forget that actually Serbia and Bosnia, because of Dodik and Republika Srpska, are the only parts of Europe that haven't introduced the sanctions to Russia. So many people think that this is something like, which have even symbolically to be demonstrated, that these are the things that we will not be tolerating, so Dodik has to be sacked. And part of the story is also, I think, demonstrations on the protests that are being going in Belgrade for 9 months. I think it's also geopolitically initiated in a way as a part of this, putting the guys under the control.
So how would you say that the situation in Republika Srpska and the situation in Serbia itself relate in terms of the European Union, the broader Western alliance, and the pressure that they are attempting to put on what they see as kind of geostrategic holdouts, if you like? Because as far as I can see, and I'm not an expert, Serbia has treading quite a fine line balancing between the European Union and Russia, and latterly more China in its foreign policy outlook. It has gained candidate status for the European Union and is still going through the various chapters it needs to complete, even though they appear to have stalled. While at the same time, it's opened itself up to a certain degree to China, and it's maintained its traditional kind of intra-Slavic, intra-Orthodox relations with the Russian Federation. So how is what is happening at the moment in Republika Srpska affecting or related to the pressure that the European Union is putting on the Vučić government in Serbia itself?
Well, in my previous answer, I think I started a little bit to connect those two processes, Republika Srpska and Serbia, with the general geopolitical background and security, if I could say. In the sense that, as you precisely defined, this is the position of neutrality, and was proclaimed in Serbian parliament in 2007, actually. So we are formally neutral country concerning security issues. This is the position that is very strongly supported by the general population. I think 80% of the people are very strongly against the alliances, especially NATO, and they would like to preserve this kind of position. It's because of Kosovo issue, because of our, as you said, the traditional contacts with Orthodox and Russia, which is the most important, has been, of course, before the communism, traditionally very important for Orthodox Slavic people here at the Balkans. Then 60% of the Chinese investment at the Balkans are located in Serbia. And we also got some geopolitical and political support sometimes in Security Council. So in that sense, that was very the issue of European Union is also, let me pass it through several observations. I mean, Serbia is in the process of waiting room, if I could say, or, like European integration it's been in the process for 25 years already. Macedonia or North Macedonia for 30 years. And at this moment, it's not big issue at all. I mean, no one really believes that we eventually is going to be part of the EU. Maybe in Montenegro for some reason, but everyone else is, totally seeing that as a non-significant issue at all. On the other hand, after 2000, we are somehow under the control, or all our politicians have to have some kind of support from the West mostly. So that's why ritually all of them have to say, well, we are for EU, we think that we're gonna go, that's our future, blah. But de facto nobody cares about that. Everyone tries to really survive, to find the new investments from the whole world, whoever comes, like is it China or Turkey or even Israel recently or whoever. So, I mean, Serbia is really kind of leading this kind of multipolar approach and like really opening itself for everyone. But in a way, you could say everyone else doing that, like North Macedonia and so on, Albania even. And anyway, but concerning the security issues, everyone has been really very much pro-Western around, and you could say that NATO, in the process of dissolution of Yugoslavia, Serbs were treated as bad guys, and everyone else who was fighting against the Serbs was having the support of NATO. So that's why, you could, of course, Kosovo as a separate entity for many reasons still hasn't been accepted yet, but everyone else has been is part of NATO, with some, I have to say, very dubious processes in North Macedonia and Montenegro, but eventually they were all pushed inside and so on. Serbia and Bosnia, meaning Republika Srpska, have refused that for the time being. And as I said, also concerning the issue of the sanctions, we are again treated as a bad example, bad guys, somebody who is displaying possibility. I mean, in a way, Hungary, but Hungary is formally member of NATO and also member of EU. But as Mr. Orban is saying, they are black sheep of that and so on. But we are not member of it, and we really try to kind of balance and play and so on. Well. Because of that, we had a lot of problems, and all the time we've been warned by the Brussels, by the NATO, by the Biden, and so on. And some people think that now, well, this is the time when the patience of the big guys have been, vanished. And they would like to press Vučić either to go more deeply into security system. So, I mean, we are already sending the grenades and ammunition to Ukraine, which is not making Russians very happy. But as long as we are, formally neutral and not joining to NATO, they can, well, tolerate, they have, the level of tolerance is decreasing, but still they can do that. And so this is the game that Vučić was kind of playing. But on the other hand, you could see that slowly the pressure from the West has been really rising. And he's been warned several times that it's about time that we should engage more into security system, that we should show more of, security acceptance to then, let me quote, erase the malignant Russian influence, and even the investments of the China are not really welcome and so on. So we see a lot of pressure that Serbia and especially Republika Srpska, because it's smaller, you don't have neither million people living there. Serbia is a little bit bigger, it's 6.5 million, so on. It's more, and it's at least formally, like independent country, and so it's not protectorate like Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I see the same hand, if I could say, or the same joint pressure on both of I could say, entities, or the state and entity and so on, in order to either force leaders who are now leading the countries to accept the more security obligation and joining to NATO sanctions and so on, or to be replaced by someone that would be more willing to do so. So I think that security issues are basically, the reason why we have both of the processes. And I think the partly the protest, it's rather complicated, but the reason why the Western guys are supporting protests are because they see this as a very useful instrument for decreasing the power of Vučić, making him more, if I could say, open for this kind of proposition, I mean weaker, and that he could give more of the deliver of the things they need on Kosovo, on Republika Srpska, on security and so on. And that's why or if he eventually refuses to accept that level that they see as a necessary, that they could probably go with another change like they did already in 2012, and they replaced Tadic with Nikolic and Vučić, and before that especially the famous operation from 2000 when Milosevic was removed, which is in the theory has been treated actually as the first colored revolution with Otpor resistance and everything else.
So I think that was the impression. I'll just say I visited Belgrade recently. I met you down there, Misha. It's not a secret. It's on my Twitter account. But before I went down to Serbia, that was the kind of obvious inference to draw, right? You have a country that's neutral, that's trying to kind of maintain its own thing down there. And you see at the same time as the West is applying pressure to them to do various things that probably aren't in its self-interest and could be quite dangerous for the country, you see a protest movement come up and you say, well, I've seen this a million times before. We've seen it recently in Georgia. One of these attempted color revolutions. We see these all over the place now. I'll say that my opinion of them is that they don't really work anymore. The last one that's actually worked was in Armenia, if you don't count the Euromaidan, which was a little bit more violent than your average color revolution, I'd say. But when I went down to Serbia, I didn't get the sense it was as simple as a color revolution. Those come with kind of very discrete packaging. It's always kind of Western liberal causes. There's always kind of an anti-corruption element. There's kind of a way that those things are packaged. And at least my sense when I was in Belgrade was that the protests didn't really look like that. So for listeners who probably assumed the same thing that I assumed, what would you say about the protests? What is their nature? Am I misreading it?
No, you're absolutely right, and it's very complicated. Then again, because of specificity of the country and the people who are involved in that. I mean, I had been recently in Armenia, and I was, seeing them with all this Euro enthusiasm and so on. It's like deja vu in Serbia in 2001, 2002, and so on. Well, but Serbia is complicated, especially now after everything that we have passed. So concerning the protest, actually, the first thing that people have to understand, actually, that they are, they have real internal causes for that. The Vučić government, or you could say his personal system of ruling, really very specific way of organizing the whole system. I mean, he's been in power for 13 years already. And he's boosting himself very much with, economical development, investments, and so on. And on the other hand, what people are mostly seeing is decreasing the level of the everything that really matters to people beside economy. And this is position of the institutions, of media, of the government generally. He's the government is really reduced to his private clerks in some way. Judiciary is in a very bad shape. All the institutions are very much reduced to what he wants, needs, and so on, which is not making people very happy. Then the quality of administration has been really reduced. Those are not really quality people, and with the time he's really using he's losing actually the better people that used to help him and so on. So it's general decrease of the system, and there is very big dissatisfaction really with the level of corruption. And or just to illustrate, he was using a lot of different instruments to completely destroy all the existing political parties, because he's very often compared with Orban or with Erdogan, but these are absolutely non-comparable stuff. Just have to remind you that Erdogan, for example, lost at the last local elections all the big cities. Like for the second time already, he lost Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, all the big. Orban is not controlling Budapest. Budapest government is made of opposition and so. In Serbia, I don't think that he can leave even the smallest municipality. He used all the possible means, including the different services or corruption or buying the people and so on, to completely ruin all the existing political parties. And so actually part of the protest, I'm coming to the essence actually, that since we don't have normal media, normal way of channelizing somehow or institutionally filtrating or focusing this kind of dissatisfaction that some part of the society are having, and the oppositional political parties are either controlled by him or totally marginalized. So that's why people started for the last several years to search for another possibilities or ways to present their dissatisfaction. So my point is actually that there are a lot of reasons for the dissatisfaction of people. So in that sense, in many ways, this doesn't resemble classical color revolutions, like especially Georgia, Armenia, or Belgrade 2000, and so on and so on. So the real dissatisfaction of the people is fundamentally reason why it's very easy to attract them, to put them in the streets, and so on and so on. On the other hand, foreign factor is definitely included. I can give you quite a lot of different testimonies about that, and I know people who are leading the protests. That's mostly university staff, including the rector of Belgrade University and some other people and so on. But and we are coming also to another specificity of the Serbian protest, is that the leadership and the people who control the streams of the upper streams of power, logistic organization, money, and so on, are very much connected to the Western spheres, mostly British, Germans, some parts of the like American system, especially the guys that were connected with USA previously and so on. But the majority of the people at the street are completely of different. They simply don't care about that. They don't care who is leading. They don't care, for that. For example, oppositional media are very much, how should I say, pro-NATO or pro-Western, which is not the case with the majority of the protesters. So majority of protesters are patriots, young people, or now there is more and more of the middle age and even some older people who think that they fight against Vučić. Is most of them think because he betrayed many of the stuff, and they would like to see more patriotic, but then again, more civilized, more institutionally driven, more, if I could say, equally, in a good sense, with equal opportunity based system, and so on and so on. So basically, you're absolutely right. This is very specific combination of the legitimate patriotic driven for many people orientation of the people who see Vučić as a kind of, let me say, traitor or whatsoever, and the leadership of the protest that is, and that's very interesting. They're completely or almost completely non-visible, because the whole process is led in a system like without the real leaders. So you don't have people, you have some abstract students or abstract organizer who are calling on the protest and so on and so on. But for many of them, we know that they really are connected with foreign subjects who are also financing that. And that's why I think that the reason is using the whole this legitimate dissatisfaction of people and channelizing that to threaten Vučić, to make him weak, and to get more of the stuff that you could deliver out of him. I could speak quite a lot about the different details, and there were also leadership, also had some connections with Georgia and even some other classical color revolution, let me say, system organization and so on. But it's not the case with the majority of the people who are at the protest. And generally, again, I can make analogies because traditionally we have this habit of mostly British who are very wise to use Serbian nationalism for its own cause when it's necessary. That's like Putsch in 1941, that was definitely organized by the British Secret Service, we have documented. And then also in 2000, actually the change, removing of Milosevic, had to be done by the Serbian patriot or nationalist, which was Koštunica. I mean, we are not Armenians to choose somebody who is the most pro-European. That guy in Serbia couldn't get any support. I mean, we despise EU at this moment for many reasons, especially including those ones that are really forcing them to see Orban as the biggest threat. I mean, people identify Brussels and EU here as LGBT, anti-Christian, then again, anti-Serbian agenda, and general support for joining EU in Serbia is somewhere around 30% only.
I suppose it's one of those rare occasions when the Europeans and Americans who want to push a color revolution are actually aligned with the population in their disdain for the incumbent. I would ask, though, I guess the future is the question is to ask about the future and what the future is for Serbia, what the future will be for Serbia. Will it be a country like Armenia or perhaps Moldova, who finds some kind of puppet of Western powers that can act quite often, not only against the country's traditional geopolitical stance and traditional interests, but their current economic and cultural interests, and in favor of the West? Or will it become a country more like, say, Hungary, which has been able to resist to a certain degree the controlling hand of the European Union and kind of liberal globalism? What does the future hold for Serbia in that sense? Can it emerge from its current discontent to be a country that can be multi-aligned, can be neutral, that can survive in such a contested geopolitical space and thrive?
Well, let me start first with the possible scenarios about the outcome of the actual crisis. There are a couple of them that might be interesting for your viewers or listeners. First, there is actually some kind of blockades, as they call them, lasting for almost 9 months. And I mean, we used to have very different protests. I was myself participating in the several the student protests in the 92 or 96, 97. I was, as a young guy there, protesting against Milosevic also, and in 2000 and so on. But anyway, we never had the protests or blockades that have been lasting for such a long time. I mean, the longest were in 97, 98, and it has been lasting for like 3-4 months, and eventually it stopped. Milosevic gave it up and so on. Now we have complete chaos that's been lasting for 9 months, with universities being blocked, with even, and this is, I've been dealing myself with comparatively, with overthrows, color revolutions, and other stuff, and so on. And this is, as far as I know, the first time ever that protesters blocked not only faculties in universities, but even schools. And it's not only secondary schools, but also primary schools. I mean, it also very much display how actually weak control Vučić of the system is, that if you can allow that they block you, I mean, it's unimaginable for Erdogan or for Orban or Fico. It's very hard to imagine. There are the reasons for this. I can tell about that, but let's keep it for now. There's been huge economic problems. There are the sectors in which 50% of the the economic activity has been gone away, like tourism, like publishing, like even I heard about the constructions and the flat market, which is totally crazy. The prices are still going up, although there has been decreased of the 30% of the selling and so on. And so it's everything is very weird. But the problem is that we will have more and more economic problems, which is really kind of making the economic and then geopolitical and political power of the system smaller and more vulnerable for many pressures and so on. And as far as I see, this will probably continue for another year, because now, within 3-4 days, the new school year is about to start. Already in several schools, including the school of my son, unfortunately, they are announcing that they will start immediately with the protests and blocking. Universities also shaking. There's a lot of problems already in many of them, and people are divided and so on and so on. So officially, protesters are now, they gave up of the former demands, actually the four ones that were connected with this horrible accident, with the killing of the 16 people or who were dead by the accident, by the fall of this construction in Novi Sad railway. And now they are asking the whole, whatever they call it, students, blockaders, or opposition, or it's now general front, but still without leaders. That's very interesting. And they are kind of preparing their own parliamentary list for the elections. And the biggest demand that they have now is that they want early elections as soon as it's possible. So the first screenplay, the first possible scenario is that Vučić eventually accepts this and goes for early election in maybe even in December this year, which would probably, ease the tensions and return to kind of, regular, more or less regular political game with the elections as the way to solve the problem somehow. The other solution that we hear is that we will have early elections in spring next year, which will probably meaning that opposition will continue with blockades and the protests, which are now, daily in 20, 30 different cities. Now they are dispersed. It's not big rallies, but actually everywhere people, and you could see that there is general dissatisfaction, maybe people who are really willing to fight against the police, against Vučić people, and so on and so on. And the third possible scenario is that maybe in spring next year, Vučić cuts his mandate. He is about to leave the position of president in 2027. And some people think that he might just go together with the early parliamentary and early presidential election next year. So eventually he would find some other person to run for president, and he would return to be a leader of the parliamentary list, and probably he would see himself as, again, prime minister, and so on and so on. And there is a fourth scenario which people are mentioning, connected with what David Betts is speaking about, the generally Western and European societies, and this is civic war. In a way, what we had for the last 10, 15 days in Serbia was really resembling kind of civic war. Thank God nobody has passed away for the time being in the fighting, but there were really horrible fights in which we have the football hooligans, local mafia on both sides. We have the protesters going to the local branches and offices of SNS, of Vučić party, and really following Molotov's cocktail or putting them on fire. Some really, again, then Vučić guys were going into their seats and doing the same stuff. So it was really resembling at the time to a kind of small civic war going with low intensity in 20, 30 towns. Very, very frustrating and problematic energy, in which it's really miracle that still nobody has passed away. So in many ways also, and I'm finishing with it, that the way Vučić was handling those things were really very unfortunate. Somehow he was hoping that, the energy will just disappear, then vanish, like it happened in the previous big protest, like in 2023, and so on and so on. So these are unfortunately the possible scenarios for the outcome of the general crisis, and generally I think probably it's gonna last here more. Concerning and the general position of Serbia, which is of course connected somehow with internal stability and the power and the consensus which we don't have at this moment. In many ways, as I told you, the reasons for the protests are internal. And concerning the foreign politics, with all his, sometimes exaggerating or this and that direction, but this idea of balancing is something that majority of the people are supporting. There are very small amount of people that would be happy to see, Armenian kind of government in Serbia. So in that sense, I don't think that it's possible to have, fully pro-NATO government that will go with, this ideological position, accepting LGBT and so on. They would have a lot of problems very soon. So my point is that usually that's the classical British system of working with the Serbs. You have to find the nationalist to deliver the bad stuff, because they have kind of legitimacy to betray. I'm joking a little bit, but if Tadic was about as somebody who was seen as a pro-Western, delivering at least 10% of what Vučić did, he would have had very, very big problems. So generally, in the future, whoever comes after Vučić, I think the general position of the people will not change. We have some very specific tradition of going against the current generally. I mean, after all, we are the only crazy people in Europe that fought the war against the NATO, which some people connect with our Kosovo kind of tradition, going against the current and so on. So you cannot change that in every possible way. So any government will have to take care about specific position with the Chinese, with the Russians. Also, somehow we got some rapprochement with Turks, at least for the time being, which was very important for us because we have a lot of Muslim living in the Balkans, and even Slavic Muslim, like Bosniaks are Slavic Muslim people. And of course, religion plays very important role. So, having Serbia with a relatively good relationship with Turkey also helped to ease the relationship with our Islamic neighbors here and so on. So our position will stay complicated, and on the other hand, the problem is that many people, and we are going back to ideology, many people at the West, NATO and Brussels are seeing as an ideological task actually to let me say, bring us to our senses and to make us, normal in that way, like pro-Western people and so on, which is very hard to do with the Serbs, So there will be a lot of pressure, definitely, and I can only hope that we don't have that people at our streets and so on, and to return to, let me say, regular parliamentary systems of the fight and solving the conflicts, which we used to have before Vučić. I have to say, the period from 2002, 2003 until 2012 were quite a decent time of democracy, in which we used to have like 5-6 different political parties, coalitions, relatively functioning democratic and media system with so on. But the point is that big Western powers were very dissatisfied with that. They simply they supported strongly Vučić and his party coming and taking a lot of power in order to be able to deliver on Kosovo and many other things, which he did eventually in some way.